Hello again. So this is the 10th episode in the development diary for Fragile Existence. I think it was about a month since I last did one of these development diaries, and that one was very much focused on the planet generation stuff and the texturing, the splat mapping, and the sort of adding features to the planet. So I've finally moved away from all that kind of thing. We're about 6 months into this project now. I don't know whether it's moving along particularly quickly or slowly, but I know that every week progress is being made, and I'm happy to see this version number slowly going up. Still some way from release, obviously, but I'm definitely still enjoying it. So this is sort of the prototype for the main menu screen. It's just a skybox with a camera that rotates and a bit of atmospheric effect. Your usual sort of options. Prologue is going to be the tutorial to the game. The story mode is going to be, well, you guessed it, the story mode. The scenario is going to be sort of like condensed little stories, I guess. It's sort of similar to a lot of games, say like Civilization, where you can select a scenario and it's something that's sort of been set up in advance, a certain sort of challenge or puzzle that you need to solve, or just like a free-for-all, or a battle royale, or different game modes that you wouldn't necessarily find in the story mode. Database is kind of like your in-game Wikipedia, all about the ships, the resources, the tech, that kind of thing, and the creation, which brings us to the sort of in-game tools. Now we've got sort of the basics of a tooltip system working here as well. And we've got the planet editor, the solar system editor, and the scenario editor. And the scenarios are my word for sort of combining groups of solar systems with their planets, and then saying, okay, so this is what ships you start with, this is what sort of opponents you're going to be up against, what sort of things are going to be happening whilst you're playing, that kind of thing. So there'll be events, there'll be some scripting language possibly included. The scenario brings it all together essentially. So when you make a scenario, it then becomes part of the actual scenario ribbon, and you'll be able to play it from here. So currently, when we click on the planet editor, we just bring up the planet load dialog, which is split into 3 sections. So we've got the planet list, the solar system list, and the scenario list. And you'll notice we have the unallocated planets and unallocated systems as well. So when we want to make a planet, what we do is we just sort of type it in over here. We say what type we want: earth, light, rocky, gas, and there'll be many more than that. Earth light's the only one I've actually finished, although I'll definitely be working on the others soon. And when we click new, this is actually serialized to the system. In the build, it's added to the persistent data path. In the editor, it's added to assets, ready to be included in an asset bundle. The idea is that in build, it will be added to persistent data path, and then you'll be able to share planet systems scenarios with other players. So the edit button's included. This sort of little icon is included here to show that you haven't built it yet. The name and the type, and you see it's inallocated. It's listed under unallocated planets, under unallocated systems. We can do the same with systems. This is currently unallocated. We can also create a scenario. So let's just do scenario test. Yes, I'm amazing with names. And you see there's 0 systems. If we go over here now with that selected, we can add the Sol system. And with that selected, we can add a planet. In this case, I'll go with Earth. And then you see that it adds an icon to show that there is a planet included. You see it all. I realise that the dialogue's not the most user-friendly thing in the world, but it definitely works. And it's serializing as we go ahead. So if we create an unallocated system, this is serialized as a system in the relevant folder. When we create a scenario, it's serialized in the relevant folder, and any systems or planets you add are automatically moved over into that file. So with that all selected, if we go into edit, we go into the familiar planet editor screen. So this just loaded another scene. You may note I can actually use the mouse whilst it's loading this time, or generating, because what I've done is I've pushed everything onto asynchronous paths using coroutines. And so the idea is that I wanted to be able to load the planets whilst we're doing other things, and I realized I needed to go in and do quite an overhaul on the way the code was presented, and now they actually load relatively seamlessly, and you can still do what you could do before. You'll note that the settings panel has disappeared. That's because I'm in the process of switching over to like the main menu UI system. It's going to be using this UI instead. And I realized I might as well just wait to do that. I know it works. I'll just wait until I know exactly what I want to be able to change, and then I'll re-include that. Anyway, so we built Earth. Clearly we can't change any of the settings. So let's just save it and go back. That takes us back to the main menu screen. And if we go into creation, what would happen is that if we selected it, this icon would now show a thumbnail. This is one of the things I wanted to do next, and that thumbnail I intend to use in game as a sort of an icon or in map screens to represent it as well. So that's why I'm kind of delaying that, because I need to know exactly what I want to use that thumbnail for. And we can add another planet. Let's add Mars. I know it's not Earth-like, but let's roll with it. Clearly it doesn't want to do that. But it has anyway. Okay, so there's a few bugs obviously. If we exit out of that, we now have 2 built planets. If we go back, I'm presuming. Yep, okay, so what we can then do is actually load into this scenario. Now currently the edit button is being used to actually load the scenario. That's not where it will be eventually. So if we go in, hopefully this is still, yep. And this is the warp conduit. You can select your vehicles, your ships, and you can do anything you want to do, bring up item panels for the inventory, that kind of thing. And then when we arrive, yes, I have completely stolen the Star Wars warp sequence, but I'm not ashamed. I think it looks okay. It announces where we are, and then the drives kick in. And what I haven't really done here is worked on what will happen in terms of moving the ships to the planet. That's kind of one of the next things I need to be thinking about in the sort of the scope of movement around the solar system in general. But we can switch to the planet camera and sort of do what we would normally do. Clearly that doesn't want to draw a line, but it is actually calculating it. And we can actually switch the cam to Mars. And you see, I'm not having to load Mars in. Yes, I know it doesn't look like Mars, because it's just been added to another layer. So each planet is added to its own layer, and I can very instantaneously switch between the two. And so that's the idea going forward. The actual warp conduit scene was the loading scene, or the loading screen for the solar system. So it didn't take too long to actually build. And if we go back and go through that again, perhaps it'll be a little bit more obvious what I've done. So the scene's loaded, and this is now generating the planets. You may notice as I move around there's some slight jerkiness as the collider meshes are added to the physics system. And then we warp in and we are switching to layer 1. And this does actually dynamically update, but I'm clearly just going to the same planet. And then we move in again. So clearly going forward from here, I've got the beginning of the game, at least the scenario. The actual story mode will be based on the scenarios, but just with more details about characters and story, that kind of thing. But we've got the front end in place now. So we go from the warp sequence all the way through to the ships arriving at their destination. The idea is that this is a bit of a staging sort of point. So you'll be able to move the ships along the conduit here so that you'll know which ships are going to be at the front. And you know, you'll be able to do any work you kind of need to do as well. And what I really would like to do is actually have battles in the warp conduit as well. So you'll be able to have fleets that sort of follow you in and sort of some sort of little battles going on even whilst we're loading in the planets. But once the planets are loaded in, we'll be able to seamlessly switch between them, pretty much as we do here, but instead of just pressing a button, we'll actually show the ships moving away, and then they'll just turn around, be added to another layer, and come towards the other planet. So going forward from here, I ultimately need to add in the solar system editor. Now this is going to be an entirely separate scene itself, and it'll be a bit like building the game board. So you'll know what planets are in your system because you've gone to this screen and you've added your actual planets, and then once you start editing the system, you take these planets and you place them relative to one another in a sort of top view that you can zoom in and out of, and that will help us to work out the sort of the lines of movement between the planets, which sun or star will actually be present there as well. So what colour the light is, how hot the planets might well be, and where the actual warp-in point for the solar system is as well, which obviously influences what we're doing here. So this would be, you can actually set which planet you end up warping close to, and from there that solar system will be used to inform the way that ships can actually move around this solar system, even if they're doing it in a sort of quite a fake way, or a sort of way that's, I'm not actually going to build a solar system. I'm going to have lines moving away from the planet based on the solar system editor, so they'll inform which direction other planets are. So you'll see icons up here for Mars, for example, and you'll be able to click there to send a ship there, but it won't actually move away in space, if that makes any sense. It'll move away and then it'll start moving back to the center. So the solar system editor informs the way that it'll all be sort of, the cloak and daggers angle of it is going to work. So that's what I really want to work on next, and also adding in other planet types and getting some sort of ground movement going, because the pathfinding system is definitely working. I still need to make it asynchronous so that it splits the workload over multiple frames, and there'll be some sort of polling systems so that units that want to move have to request a path, and so then that's all split over the frames correctly. And obviously features need to be added as well, but apart from that, I feel like things are going relatively good. I'm really hoping to have some gameplay in by Christmas, and yeah, thanks for watching.